the old Atomic 4. It runs, but not very good. Yeah, we'll do a little oil change on that and see if we can improve the situation a little bit by tuning up a bit with new spark plugs and oil change. Oil is pretty thin. That's how easy it is to change the spark plugs. Okay, so we're doing an oil change on an Atomic 4 gasoline engine. That's where the dipstick was. So I pulled the dipstick out and I got one of those round suction devices here. And we pump a couple of times and we'll suck out the oil. Before I started that procedure, I warmed up the engine for about 5 to 10 minutes. It's probably good that you have warm oil that makes it thinner and easier to suck out. Once you're done with all of that, this here is a cap that you might have seen a couple of times, sitting right on top. That's the front of the engine. That's how that looks like. So it's a bit weird and finicky sometimes to put on, but that's all. That's how it sits on. And then you pull that off and put your funnel in and replenish oil. I think she takes about 4 quarts, if I'm not mistaken. It depends on how the engine is placed in the boat, what the angle is, and if you have a version that uses the same oil in the transmission case as in the engine pan, or if that would be separate, so all of that matters. So check out what engine you exactly have and then replenish, or just go by dipstick level later on. And obviously overfilling is not good and not enough is also not good. So somewhere between 3 to 4 quarts should be happy medium. So before we get too deep into our oil change and tune-up of the Universal Atomic 4 engine, let's have a closer look at her specifications so that we have a better idea about what we're actually working on here today. This engine is a 4-cylinder vertical, 4-cycle as in 4-stroke L-head marine gasoline engine. So important to note here, it has been designed from the get-go as a marine engine. It came over the years in many different variants, but most importantly here to notice, it came in 2 different sizes essentially. There was a smaller 18 horsepower 13 kilowatt or the bigger 30 horsepower 22 kilowatt engine available. The later one, the 30 horsepower here, is the one we are discussing here today. That's the one we're working on. The cooling system is simple, rather primitive. It's a raw water single cycle cooling system with a little thermostat and impeller, and basically cycles raw water around the cylinder heads, and that's it. So there's no inner cooling cycle with coolant and heat exchanger and all of that, you know, like you would expect it from a more modern diesel engine these days. That doesn't exist. Also, the lubrication system is equally simple. Has a little pump, cycles the oil from the pan up, and doesn't have a filter. Important to note, it does not have an oil filter. So you need to be really on top of your oil changes to keep the oil relatively clean, to keep it in good working order. Also, as a little side note, it doesn't have an air filter either. First built in 1949 and remained in production until 1984, and the manufacturer is the Universal Motor Company here in the United States, and they produced over 40,000 units. Get this, over 40,000 units. That's an impressive number. Apparently there's still about half of them operational, and well, those numbers, I mean, take that with a grain of salt, but let's say at least we can conclude from these numbers it has been a very popular engine, and these engines are still readily available out there. The specifications here to the right, the bore, displacement, compression ratio, engine rotation, counterclockwise from the flywheel end, firing order, 1, 2, 4, 3. Important to note here the reduction gear ratio. There have been two different versions available, and now it matters whether or not you have an engine that shares the reduction gear case with the engine oil pan and runs the same oil, or if that is actually separate, which would equate then in less engine oil that you put into the actual engine and an extra reduction gear case that you have to service also. So please pay attention to that, not that you have a separate gear case and you forget about it and never service it, and out of sudden it seizes up or whatnot and runs dry, and you get the idea. So that really matters. Stick with your owner's manual, and if you're not quite sure, have a good look at the reduction gear case. If it has a separate compartment, you see the little screw with a dipstick on there also, and then you know you have to service that separately, and it might also use, by the way, a different lubricant. So best will be really do your research online, or if you have a manual, stick with the owner's manual. Also important to note, 15 degrees for the maximum operating angle here, around 15 degrees give or take. So that's how the engine should be installed. Some have them under the companionway entrance, others might have the engine under the city and the salon area, like I have it in my version of the Ericsson 35 Mark II. There was also a version of the same boat that had it under the companionway entrance. I'm mentioning that here because it matters if you ever think about a diesel replacement potentially. If it's under the companionway, you have more height available. Usually the diesel engines most likely will be a little bit higher. So if it is under the city in the salon area, the advantage would be that you have good engine access from all sides. So there's always ups and downs to everything. If you have replaced one of these engines with a diesel, please drop a comment if you want and let me know where you had it, if it was under the city, if the height was sufficient and whatnot. That would be interesting to know. Moving on, the fuel, regular leaded gasoline. They claim it will also function on unleaded fuel with precautions. I personally prefer to run even higher octane to have a better stability, better knock index and so forth and so on, but that's personal preference. You don't have to. Lubrication oil recommended by my owner's manual is a straight grade 30. So the synthetic oils, the 10W30 and whatnot that people run these days haven't been around way back then. It seems to work well. I don't know, I just like to stick with the owner's manual, and what I put in is basically the recommended straight grade 30 here. Also the spark plug, the J8C by Champion is the recommended spark plug here. I know there's other ones you could use also, but please do your own research on that to make sure that you have the right one. And if in doubt, again, stick with your owner's manual. Last but not least, before we're moving on here, I would like to point out to you for parts and service, Moya Marine. And I'm not sponsored by them, but I think they are a really great resource. They're still out there, to my best knowledge. That's the biggest company that still has spare parts for the Atomic 4. They also have upgrade kits, like for instance an electronic ignition kit and so on. They have all three different types of carburetors that were on these engines over the years. They have everything you could possibly need, I think. And they have great how-to videos also. So I put the link down below into the description box. The link you see on the screen is not clickable, so you cannot click on that and get to the page, unfortunately. But if you get into that description box underneath the YouTube video here, you will find that same link, and if you click on that, it will take you straight to the homepage. So it might be very helpful if you try to maintain this engine in proper working order or even do some upgrades. I hope that gave you a really good overview of the Universal Atomic 4. So without further ado, let's get back to our oil change and tune-up. Alright, we're changing spark plugs. I like to do one at a time, then I'm not getting confused here. Here's number one. See how looks like. Oh yeah, they are super foul. It's actually a surprise that they still do work. Alright, so it's a J8C. And then the original champion J8C. I believe there's another spark plug you could also use that is also acceptable. You should probably clean that out here neatly around and then replace. And be careful that you get the threads right. Do not screw them in off. Do not force it in. Should be really easy like so. No force necessary. Hand tie it and then tighten it up just a little bit further, but really just a little bit further, and that's it. Number one. I just felt like getting at least a little extension to make it easier. So that's something that anybody can do, it's super easy. Just don't over tighten the spark plugs. That looks way better. They should screw in very, very easily. If they don't, something's off, so don't try then to force it or you will break something. Number two. Nasty. Number three, last but not least, number four. And I like to do one at a time so that I have no chance getting confused here with what ignition cable goes to what plug. I know it's probably really hard to do, but anyhow, I have a talent of screwing simple things up, so I like to do one at a time. That's it. That's how easy it is to change the spark plugs. And as you can see, they've been pretty bad. So I think it's burning too rich. Would be probably good to lean her down a little bit. Yeah, we're also just about done with that oil change. I think there's not much more coming out. I got the spark plugs, changing oil, then I need to get the grease cup. They have somewhere down there grease cup. And I start to understand why people like these engines. Because, you know, they're simple. They're like a tractor engine. So it's not too tough to work on them. Here's what I'm using to put back into the engine. It's a straight S3E14, and that is recommended for the Atomic 4. So that's the dipstick. You see max and min. That goes into. Let me see that I get this for you right down clips in and see how it goes and do a little test run. Already coming up on the dipstick. That's after 2 quarts. So I'd say probably 2 more, 1 at least, and then we'll see with the 4th one how much we really need. So that's now 3 quarts. We're getting there. Maybe half. Half should do it. Definitely don't want to overfill it. So let's check where we are. Once again, dipstick down. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good. That's showing full. Yeah, just at the full line. So that's good. Get back on. And that's all that there is really to it. All change done. Let's fire up and see how we're doing. You find the primer switch. Always turn off the fuel valve at the tank to starve the engine out, so hopefully then there's no fumes in the carburetor. So now that she's primed, we'll run that ditch blower for a while and give it a crank and see if she starts up. Okay, that went well, making water and everything, so that's good. Little tune-up, little oil change. So like I said, now I try to let her stuff. Alright, one last confirmation on the dipstick. Full. And nice and clean. Wonderful. So I just noticed that my prop shaft packing is dripping a little bit more than it should. So I'll give it a try and tighten it up. There's plenty of threading left, I guess. That's the lock nut here. That came off easy, just a little up. Let's see if we can turn in just a quarter turn. Pitch bump is another topic here. Catastrophe. Don't want to go too tight for sure. Slow down quite significantly, that looks good to me. So 3 a minute, 3 to 4. That's good right there, I like that. Lock nut goes against. Hold that in place here. Just turn the lock nut against it. Just snug enough. Now just to be extra sure, we'll let it run and see if it worked. Alright, so that's how you're supposed to tighten up your packing. So as long as you can see threads left on it, you have packing material left, so you don't need to take the whole unit out and put new packing material in and all of that. That's unnecessary. Again, I always close the fuel valve up to the plastic tank and like to let the engine stuff so that the carburetor runs out. That she runs really lean at the very end. I hope it cleans her out a little bit. Well, that's it for today's episode. We really hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. And if you did, please be so kind, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. That really helps us to mess with that YouTube algorithm. Also, consider becoming a Patreon. Those are folks that give a couple of bucks every episode, and that helps us to buy new equipment, enhance our productions, and make just everything a little bit nicer for next time. Speaking of next time, we hope to see you here again on Sailing Good Old Boats. Cheers!